always been drawn to forgotten places, as if something inside me needed the solitude, the dust, and the echoes of the past. Abandoned houses have always had that effect on me. I grew up hearing stories about hauntings, entities, and things that shouldn't be awakened, but I never took them seriously, until that day. It was late in the afternoon, when the sky was starting to darken earlier than it should have, that I heard about an old house in the middle of the forest. They said that no one came near it anymore, that even animals avoided passing by. That instigated me. It was everything I was looking for. I didn't think twice before getting ready and heading in that direction. The trail was almost invisible. Dry branches scratched my face, and the trees seemed to close in as I advanced, as if the forest didn't want to let me pass. The air grew colder, and the sound of my footsteps on the leaves was the only thing that accompanied me. As much as I tried to deny it, there was a presence there, something that watched me between the logs and the silence. But curiosity was stronger than fear. I walked for almost an hour until I saw among the dense vegetation the dark silhouette of the house. She was exactly as they had described. Old, forgotten, and completely out of time. The windows were broken, the porch wood was rotten, and the door hung on a rusty hinge, swaying in the wind. I approached slowly, feeling that each step took me towards something I could no longer undo. The house seemed to breathe, as if it were alive, as if it had been waiting for me all this time. I touched the handle and felt the cold, damp metal, as if the structure itself was feeding on the surrounding darkness. There was no sign of life, but the weight of the place was almost physical. I walked through the door and was greeted by a thick silence, which drowned out even my thoughts. It was more than an abandoned place. It was as if I had invaded a forbidden space, forgotten by except for what still lived there. And in that moment, without knowing it, I took my first step towards what I should never have found. Wood creaked beneath my feet as I entered. The air was denser than outside, as if every particle was trapped in time. The walls were covered in mold, and the floor was a mosaic of loose boards, splinters, and dry leaves blown by the wind. Everything there seemed to have been frozen decades ago. But what caught my attention the most was the smell. It wasn't just mold or rotten wood. There was something more, a metallic, almost imperceptible odor, reminiscent of rust or old blood. My eyes took time to adjust to the dim light, and even then I had the feeling that there were more shadows than objects in the room. An oppressive silence took over the room, and every time I took a breath, I felt like something was breathing with me. I explored the first room with slow steps, paying attention to every detail. An armchair turned upside down, torn, curtains dancing in the wind from a broken window, dirty handprints on the walls. I tried to rationalize it. It could be former residents, invaders, or even teenagers looking for a scare. But inside, something told me that nothing there was casual. I saw a staircase leading upstairs, but there was something stopping me from going up. The house seemed alive, as if it had eyes, as if analyzing me, and worse, as if he decided at that moment what he would do with me. The environment changed, not in structure, but in atmosphere. A second of distraction, and I swore the room was a little darker, colder, as if someone or something was testing me. I went to the next corridor, guided only by my cell phone's flashlight. The walls seemed to pulse. The sound of the wind outside was gone, as if the house had closed the world behind me. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't see direct movement. But I felt, deeply, that something was moving through the rooms at the same time as me. Something silent, something that hid in the shadows and waited. Sometimes my flashlight caught strange shapes, as if there was a figure there, which disappeared the next moment. And even without seeing clearly, I knew that presence was getting closer and closer, observing, measuring, breathing with me. The light from the flashlight was shaking in my hand, but it wasn't because of the battery. It was fear, a fear that grew silently, like something buried long ago, and now awakening. I entered a room that appeared to have been a living room. In the center, a worn carpet covered part of the floor, stained with dark marks that I didn't dare touch. And then something changed in the environment. The air became colder. The metallic smell grew stronger. I looked towards the corner of the room, and there it was. One disproportionate shadow glued to the wall, but without a visible body. She didn't move, but at the same time, it was as if she were vibrating. High, stretched, a neck too long to be human, arms that almost touched the ceiling, no face, no details, but with presence. I was paralyzed. Instinct told me to run, but my feet didn't respond. The shadow made no noise, did not threaten. She just was there, observing. And even without eyes, I knew I was the center of her attention. The most disturbing thing was the stillness. It didn't blink, it didn't waver, as if he had been waiting for me for a long time. I blinked, and for a second she seemed closer. Maybe it was impression, maybe not. The flashlight failed for a moment, a second, and when it came back on, the corner was empty. But the feeling remained. I knew she was still there, only now, out of my sight. I walked back into the hallway, trying to rationalize what I had seen, but the sound of my own footsteps echoed strangely, as if someone was repeating them with a slight delay. I looked back. Nothing. But fear had already planted its roots. Something followed me, and I understood at that moment that the shadow wasn't just part of the house. She was home, and now that he had noticed me, he no longer intended to let me go. I started walking faster, but the hallways seemed to get longer. Doors that previously led to rooms now led to the void. The lantern shook, my heart too, and behind me, the sound of something crawling, something that shouldn't be there. But it was getting closer and closer. I ran down a hallway I swore I'd been down before. The walls seemed thinner now, as if they were slowly getting closer, suffocating my every step. I began to realize that the house no longer obeyed logic. Doors that once led to the kitchen now opened onto stairs, stairs that went up and then down to the same place. It was as if space was folding in on itself, like a maze that changed the rules with every decision I made. The shadow no longer needed to hide. I couldn't see her directly, but her presence was in everything. In the cracks in the ceiling, in the wind that wasn't coming from anywhere, in the echo of a breath that wasn't mine. I tried to mark the path. I broke pieces of wood, left tracks with the flashlight, even scratched the walls with a key I found lying on the floor. But nothing worked. When he returned, the signals disappeared, the walls regenerated. The sound of my own footsteps began to seem artificial, as if someone was imitating them, purposely delaying to drive me crazy. I started talking out loud, trying to convince myself that everything was real, that I was still in control. But the more I talked, the more the silence seemed to mock me, and when I stopped to breathe, I heard something, a muffled whisper. I couldn't understand it, but it was close and familiar, like someone was whispering my name on the other side of the wall. I entered a dark room, trying to escape the twisted logic of the house. It was some kind of room, with overturned furniture and walls scratched with claws, or something that wanted to look like claws. There, for the first time, I felt the ground vibrate slightly beneath my feet, as if the house was waking up. And at that moment, I was sure this was no longer a common structure. It was a creature, a living organism. and I had entered straight into his nervous system. I knelt down, with the flashlight pointed at the ground, when something passed me. I didn't see it, but I felt the displacement of air, the shiver running down my spine. I slowly got up, and when I turned back, there was a new door. She wasn't there before, but now it seemed like the only way. There was something wrong with the new door. It was different from the others, older, thicker, as if it had been built to hold something inside or outside. There were marks on it, as if someone had scratched the wood with desperate nails. But what made me hesitate was the latch. It didn't have a common lock. It was a heavy, almost ceremonial clasp, as if sealing something sacred or cursed. The shadow was not visible, but its weight was palpable. The air was still, trapped like a breath choked in time. I approached the doorknob and felt an almost painful cold radiating from it. The silence was absolute, and yet I was sure I heard something on the other side, slowly dragging. The wood groaned as I pushed on it, but it didn't give. Locked. I knocked hard, as if my instinct needed an answer, and she came. Not in words, not in sound, but in a presence. Something approached the door from the inside. The shadow. I knew it was her. I felt his height, his awkward shape, his neck bent like a distorted branch. And then, as if it were part of a nightmare, I saw the shadow slowly form beneath the crack in the door. First, the fingers. Then, something like a jaw too long for any creature we know. She was waiting for me. And the worst thing was that he seemed to know that sooner or later I would open the door. I took a few steps back, my chest rising and falling in panic. The flashlight started to fail. The light flickered and cast the shadow against the walls, making it seem larger, more alive, more aware. It was as if time around me had frozen and I was trapped in a single eternal second of decision. Open, to escape, stand still, and wait. It was then that the shadow seemed to retreat. Not because he gave up, but because he was leading me. The door was still closed, but now there was one certainty. That was on the other side, and it wanted me to follow another path. And I, as if I had been guided by her the whole time, obeyed. I ran without direction, no plan, just ran. The house seemed to respond to my steps. Doors appeared, others closed on their own, and the hallways changed size, stretching as if mocking my attempt to escape. I tried to go back the same way I came in, but everything was different. The living room window was gone. The stairs now led to a basement. The hallway carpet had turned into an uneven floor of rotted wood that gave way beneath my feet. At every turn, I saw only darkness and walls that seemed to pulse. It was as if the house was slowly absorbing me, as if he wanted me to understand there was no more way out. I tried to open one of the windows, which had now reappeared, but on the other side there were only bricks. No forest, no sky, just raw, dirty bricks, as if I were buried inside the house itself. My screams echoed unanswered, swallowed by the walls. The air was getting heavier, as if each room had twice the gravity. And